They say when trouble comes, it comes in abundance. I got an email from my workplace that I had been made redundant, as COVID affected the daily operations of the business. I felt like I hit rock bottom, losing my child and my job at the same time. No words of counseling could console me. I locked myself inside our room, every day crying and praying for the pain to ease, asking God why did He allow this to happen to me. I was in a dark place. I felt angry with God and everyone around me, but I kept praying. Public spaces was not for me anymore. I didn't want to be around anyone I know. I cried, I prayed, I cried some more and prayed, hoping I would find the strength or get an answer on how to climb out of this dark hole I was in. Smoking and drinking became my best friend, as it eases the pain a bit, but then it was back to crying again. Paps was hurting and he knew I was hurting too. He tried taking my mind off things by taking me on road trips, or we would chill by the ocean at least once per week. It seemed to work and I was coping, but there was still an emptiness inside. A few months passed and I became pregnant. Paps and I was filled with joy. It felt like a lifeline of happiness was thrown to us. I scheduled my first doctor's appointment with great anticipation in starting my pregnancy journey again. The weekend before my doctor's appointment, Paps and I planned a road trip to the river. Whilst taking a shower to get ready for the trip, I noticed I was bleeding. Paps and I head to the lab to get an ultrasound done, but the lab was closed as it was on a Sunday. I got very worried, but Paps thought I was being worried for nothing. He decided that he was still going to the river, but I told him, I am going to the hospital. I went to the hospital alone. Paps turned up after his river trip. I was admitted at the hospital, as the doctors did some tests but could not locate the baby inside my womb. I tried to stay positive, telling myself, the pregnancy is early, so the baby would have been hard to locate. A few days passed and the doctors did more tests, but still could not locate the baby. They scheduled a surgery as they concluded that it was an ectopic pregnancy. By hearing the word surgery, I started to panic, but at the same time trying to stay hopeful even though it was evident that this was a hopeless case. The surgery was done and they found the baby stuck between my right fallopian tube and my womb. They had no choice but to cut out the tube and a piece of my womb. I was left with one fallopian tube, a piece of my womb gone and no baby. I felt like a failure. 2 unsuccessful pregnancies which left me thinking, maybe this is not for me. Paps and I would have conversations about him being okay if we didn't have any child together. He would assure me that our life would go on okay. As the months passed, we occupy ourselves by having date nights every weekend to ease our minds and reconnect. We would take spontaneous road trips to different restaurants, or have heart-to-heart conversations at our favorite chill spot by the ocean. We felt a level of happiness once more. I convinced myself that I am okay childless, even though I did all the tests to ensure that my remaining fallopian tube was working. 15 months later, I got pregnant once more. Seems like a miracle, my remaining tube actually works. I didn't want to get too excited, but I was hopeful that this time it would go well. I scheduled my first doctor's appointment. The morning of my appointment, as I was taking a shower, I noticed there was blood. This was all too familiar as I have been here before. I screamed out to Paps from the bathroom and he came running. Paps told me not to worry and let's head to the hospital. I tried to stay calm and positive, but knowing my history my faith became weak. As I waited at the hospital, I whispered silent prayers asking God to strengthen my faith and give me a miracle. The doctors ran some checks and we were told that the baby was still in the womb, but my cervix was overly irritated and slightly open. I was placed on bed rest with no sex for the duration of the pregnancy. We decided to keep the pregnancy as private as we could. We didn't want to risk another pregnancy loss in the public's eyes. It was a tough first trimester. I couldn't keep anything down, as I was overly nauseous. My weight began to decrease and I was extremely weak. I head back to the hospital where I was admitted for 1 week because of dehydration. I tried to stay hopeful and positive, praying as often as I could. Pap's job became very demanding. He started coming home fairly late to extremely late. At the end of the first trimester, the decision was made for his 2 teenage boys to move in with us permanently. I became stressed as Paps was always at work and I was on bed rest with 2 teenage boys to care for. Paps didn't think I was stressed as he made arrangements for his mother to cook and send dinner for them. He thought that was all the help I needed. At that point, everything negative began flowing through my mind. I didn't understand why Paps would have to leave work late every day, coming home at midnight most of the time. If I had a pregnancy craving, I would have to wait until he gets home at that late hours of the night. I came to the conclusion in my head that Paps was being unfaithful. I couldn't think otherwise. I tried my best not to cry in this pregnancy, but at the end of the 2nd trimester, I was given pressure meds, as my pressure was recorded high. I locked myself in our room every day, away from the boys as we were in the 3rd trimester and I didn't want any mishaps. Teenage boys are actually a handful. I was angry but I prayed for peace. I was extremely pained up and could hardly get by, but my sweet Paps still could not understand the magnitude of the pain I was feeling. At times, Paps seemed as if he didn't want to be around me. Everything I do annoys him and he gets angry easily. There was hardly any smile on his face. I felt like I was walking on eggshell when I'm around him. I couldn't comprehend why my sweet Paps was treating me so harshly in times when I needed him the most. Paps became a different person. And somehow the change in his affection towards me cemented my suspicions of him being unfaithful. Well, at least in my mind. Or maybe it's just my Harmon speaking.